What's up, friends? See some familiar faces. Thanks for jumping back in. Jay should be on here shortly. Or if not, it's just me by myself, and this is a solo podcast, I guess. So we'll see what ends up happening. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but here in North Carolina, the weather is just premium right now. It's like a high of 65, 70 today. So I think the Dash crew is going to be like bailing here real soon to go hang out for the rest of the Friday outside, which should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to that. There's Jay. Hey, Jay.
Hello, hello, hello.
Welcome, welcome. Figure 101. We'll give some folks time to trickle in, and then I liked your idea about doing a general announcement again at the very beginning for anyone that's new and hasn't been a part of one of these before. I think that was a good idea. What's the weather like up in Wisconsin for you there, Jay? Have you developed a nice Wisconsin accent while you've been hanging up?
Oh, oh, buddy, it is so beautiful up here today. Let me tell you what.
Yeah, I'm really excited about today's conversation. Just a lot of really interesting things I think going on between some of the stuff that Adobe's been doing, cool project to go over, and then I'm really excited for a larger discussion on generalists versus specialists. I mean, I feel like this is something that I've talked towards like every year, and it's perpetually adjusting and fluctuating. So I'm curious to hear what everyone thinks on their end as well too. So
Hey, sorry.
no worries.
Baby's asleep, so today's a little bit of a weird day for me. So everything should be good, but hopefully I don't have to pop out real quick. But that's a real possibility.
Yeah, no worries. Totally understand. Babies take more importance than Mograph lunch for sure. So all good there. Well, cool. Well, I think we're good. At this point, we can kind of jump into it, and then as folks trickle in, we'll just kind of go from there. But first off, thank you all joining for another Mograph lunch. My name is Matt Garrison. I'm one of the co-founders and executive producers at Dash, and I'm joined by Jay. Jay, introduce yourself. Perfect. Well, as we'd like to do on these Mograph lunches, we kind of structure the conversation around three things: news, sort of portfolio projects, and then general industry conversations, so NPGs. And so today, what we've kind of lined up for us to talk through is some of the recent news with Adobe launching multi-frame rendering. So we can talk towards that a little bit, what that means for speeds and things like that. We talk about project. I highlighted one that I saw recently that probably poked around in some of y'all's feeds by, I'm hopefully not butchering the name, Anis Nahim with Plumehead Studio. It was a spec piece they did for Lamborghini, and man, it just looked phenomenal. So I'm excited to talk about that. And then finally, generalist versus specialist. What is preferred this day and age? Who's getting hired more? What's the long-term game for both of those roles? And so we can get into all that. So with that being said, the first thing I want to talk towards, Jay, I saw Adobe came out with multi-frame rendering. It gives sort of a new look to your standard render queue. Progress bar now has three colors. Exporter frames are blue, cache frames are this dark green, and then the currently rendered frames are light green. What Adobe put out as far as just like what this means as it pertains to speeds, they have on this blog post, they talk about it, minimum specs, mid-range system, and then sort of a high-end system. On the minimum side, they're looking at 1.2 to 1.4 times faster. Mid-range systems are coming in about 1.6, 1.75 times faster. And then if you have a high-end sort of system set up, you're looking at 2.5 to 3 times faster speeds, which, for someone who has spent way too much of their life waiting for renders to finish, it's really exciting. The speed, of course, is really great. For me, a couple of things that like first stuck out to me is like, and Jay, you might be able to talk towards this a little bit better than I am. I mean, when it comes to rendering, particularly out of After Effects, we're still dealing with a CPU, right, versus GPU. GPU is really at this point only really tethered to 3D work that we're doing, right? Is that accurate for the most part?
Yeah, and you know what? I just read up a little bit more on this afterwards. Excuse me. right after we talked about this earlier, and I was wrong. It actually is still on the CPU. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a different way of doing it. And I can talk to that real quick if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so right here it says multi-frame rendering utilizes all of the cores in your CPU in parallel. This is a significant update to the After Effects architecture, and the render pipeline has been optimized from end to end, enabling After Effects to use your system to its full potential. So before multi-processing was a thing within After Effects, but this is sort of a different technique. Whereas before, my understanding is that it kind of like had multiple versions or like multiple instances of After Effects running on each core of your CPU.
Mm.
But this is sort of like a different technique that uses all of the cores to render stuff at the same time. So yeah, I think it's like a big architecture change for them in the program. So hopefully it should result in things just being a lot faster, which is awesome.
As someone who, like, if After Effects just doesn't open for me, like, I have no idea what to do. I'm like not a tech savvy human, which is really funny when my parents are like, oh cool, he does motion design, like I can call him for any computer needs that we have. The idea that it just works faster sounds great to me. One thing that stuck out in my mind, and I'm sure anyone who's listening to this has dealt with this before, is like, After Effects just crashes mid render, right? With this, multi-frame rendering, how does that work? Like, for example, we've rendered out some projects before which are so render heavy that I actually opt to render a PNG sequence as opposed to like an MOV, just in case it fails midway through. Then I at least can like rescue the PNGs as opposed to like a corrupt MOV file. With multi-frame rendering, I wonder if how that works. Like, if you're rendering PNGs, is it like scattering the PNGs in the order? Like, like, so if the render failed, are you dealing with frames at the beginning, middle, and end, or is it still sort of like linear based? Do you have any idea about that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Hmm.
It looked like it was still like, how it was showing the graph that was like, these are the frames that are already rendered. These are the
Mm-hmm.
frames that are rendering. It's like green, light green, and blue or something. It looked like they were all around the same number of frames. So maybe it's like 1 through 4 is rendering at the same time. I'm not totally sure. Maybe someone later on can correct me on that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing if anyone has done any test renders with it. I know right now, if you go to the blog post that recently came out, if you just Google multi-frame rendering Adobe, it'll take you to the most recent blog post. But they have a After Effects beta project that you can download to do a test with it to see how quickly it renders. So I'd be curious if anyone's done that. And then if you want to download this version of After Effects, you can download it through Creative Cloud. It just says download After Effects beta today through the Creative Cloud desktop app. It will install alongside the release version of After Effects, and projects are fully compatible. So anyway, fun stuff to experiment with that. I think the long and short of it is that it should make your life easier and faster, and hopefully less time waiting for things to render, which is great. Okay, cool. Well, let's pivot over then to talk about a portfolio project. This one popped up on my feed earlier the week, and just was blown away by it. I just loved it. I loved everything about it. I love like the speed of it, the editing, the transitions between the sort of graphics from something that was more conceptual to something that was a little bit more polished. And the project I'm talking about is from Anis Nahim with Plumehead. So it's a Lamborghini Terzo Miliano. That's my southern way of butchering that car. Sorry, Lamborghini. But it was a spec ag. So this was all something that I read on Anis's website that they sort of just did for fun. But a little bit about Anis, a designer, artist, and art director and filmmaker. He's worked for a wide range of films, TV shows, games, ads, theme parks, medical companies, architecture firms, and many other things. Says he enjoys all things visual, and that's what he loves to do. And then just looking at some of the work that Anis has done, he's worked with companies like Disney, Fox, Sony, Warner Brothers, Legendary, Lionsgate. Basically a litany here of, if you think of just cool places to work, it seems like he's worked with them. So this piece, if you're curious on kind of what it looks like, if you just Google Lamborghini Terzo Milano spec ad, maybe type in Vimeo at the very end of that, it'll probably come up. But, I'll try to do my best to describe it to you. But basically the piece starts off in this sort of like abstract illustrated world. It looks like it's, pen and ink on paper essentially, that's just coming at you full throttle. I mean, and then there's these flashes they kind of do through these cutaways that bring in sort of a fully more rendered polished version. But I mean, just the concept of this and the editing of this was so well done. There's just so much energy in something that is relatively minimal, which I think is really great. And then, of course, I really love how it starts to transition from something that's more pen and ink to something a little bit more futuristic and tangible with some 3D renders. Now, what's really cool here, Jay, is I don't know if you realize this, but this was actually made in Blender, which blows my mind. Just building off like the conversations that we had last time, I would not have pegged this as a Blender animation, but it looks like it was Blender, X Particles, and then it was rendered with Cinema 4D Octane. But just some really beautiful imagery in here.
Now that you're saying that, I can kind of see it. Like I'm sure he used a lot of the oh man, I'm blanking on what it is right now, but the like where you can draw within the program like 2D stuff onto 3D objects.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially this whole, like,
you talking about Substance Painter?
No, it's like I can't remember what it is, but it's built into Blender. It's a grease pencil.
Okay.
Something like that, yeah. But yeah, this is awesome. It's so good.
Yeah, I'm just a really big fan of just the variety. I think, to me, in my opinion, and what really makes a piece successful is like finding ways to keep a captive audience over the course of time. I mean, we all recognize like how bad it is sometimes that like I'll watch 15 seconds of a video and bail on it, even though I'm in this industry and love cool stuff, So like captivating someone's attention for a minute, it really takes a lot of variety in what you're making and pacing. And I think this does a really fantastic job with the pacing of it, which is really great.
Is Anis in the room? Right, I heard that he might be here.
Yeah, I know. Our digital marketing coordinator Madison was reaching out to him to see if they would be able to hop on, but it doesn't look like I see Anis in the room yet. Maybe they will trickle in, but yeah, I think overall, just what a really fun piece with a lot of variety, and I think it kind of it's always a fresh reminder to see something new out there. What this reminds me of a little bit is that Honda piece that came out a while back. I think it was by Pez, where they had this sort of like concept to reality, that sort of same type approach. This sort of seems like a similar direction towards it, but it's a really good refresh of it. And I just think like introducing some of the particles and the digital side of things has been like a really nice addition to that.
Yeah, totally. I got some like Speed Racer vibes from it too.
Yeah,
with all the
definitely.
like crazy light streaks and so, like it almost feels like some like anime type referencing to in it as well. Like all the action lines. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. If you guys want to see more of Anis's work, it's just at www.anisnaeem, so ANISNAEEM, anisnaeem.com. So you can take a look at his whole portfolio work, or their whole portfolio work. Perfect. Well, let's jump in then to sort of the last thing we want to talk towards, general industry conversation. That's going to be a generalist versus specialist. And I want to make sure that I turn it over to the broader group. I can already see some folks raising their hands to talk towards some of these things, so I'm excited to get into that. But, from just a broad perspective, I think I can really talk to it from, hiring perspective at Dash and what I've seen when I worked as at an agency as well as when I was a freelancer. For me, and when I think about what we want at Dash Studio and the type of people that we're looking to bring in, it is very much so a generalist. And I think the people that we're looking for, because we're a smaller team, we have 9 full-timers and then a couple full-time contractors. We're really looking for people that can kind of bounce around and work on a bunch of different things at one time, So, I mean, Jay, you're a really great example. I know, when we hired you, you were a really great 2D whiz, did a lot of cell animation, but you've also pivoted a lot into some of our 3D work that we've been doing as well. And so I think there's just a big ask of our staff to be able to pivot around and hop to different things. In that same vein, when I think about hiring contractors or freelancers for our projects, most of the time that I'm reaching out to a freelancer, it's a result of me needing a very specific talent, right? It's like, oh, okay, we have this 3D project and we need someone who's really good at like photoreal, or we need someone who's really good at modeling, or I need a really badass cell animator to help with this character project. And so when I think about the lens of a freelancer and the type of people that we're looking for, it does tend to be more specialist. So I don't know if it's something where it's like you're looking at more of a full-time role somewhere like a studio. You might be in the world where it would be good to be great at a lot of different things. But if you're trying to live in the freelance world, then kind of having a direction or a niche may behoove you. I don't know. Do you have any takes on that, Jay? Just curious on your end.
Yeah, totally. I think you kind of nailed it. Like when I was freelancing before I started with you guys, um, I guess there would be times where, I'd be like really into doing like character traditional type animation. But I might not have had a ton of those examples in my portfolio. So it was really hard to sort of like convince someone to hire me to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
but
I
like,
know.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just gonna say, prior to Dash, when I was freelancing or even working at this agency, Centerline Digital here in the area, what I found really quickly in the agency world is I almost found myself getting pulled back into the specialist needs, like the agency, because there's so many people working there. I mean, the last one that I worked at, I think had like 120 to 140 people maybe in the prime. So there's just a lot of folks there. And what I found really quickly was that people would be like, oh, Mac's a really great fit for this type of project. And the next thing I know, that was like what I was getting pigeonholed to lead, was like these particular type of animation projects. Some were pretty Mograph heavy and stuff like that. And so I feel like when you start to enter into that world of like a full-time gig at an agency, my experience was that I got pigeonholed in doing a very specific thing a lot over and over. And I kind of lost a little bit of that variety. But then I also wonder, with the same lens as a studio, with a lot of these companies and in-house teams getting bigger and better, I kind of feel like you fall into that same realm again, where you might join an in-house team and that expectation would be that you would take on a lot more and try a bunch of different things as well. So it kind of ping pongs. I feel like it's freelance, specialists tend to be doing well, studios being more generalists, agencies, specialists, and then I feel like in-house at a company being a generalist. So I don't know, a lot of options there, a lot of variety.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, I'd love to hear from y'all. One of the things that I really enjoy about these Mograph lunch is not just having Jay and I up here talking the whole time. So I want to make sure that I open it up and get some of the opinions from other folks. So just as a recap, things I'd love to hear from you all on. Anything as far as talking about Adobe, multi-frame rendering, or just general news from applications that you'd like to share. Any portfolio projects you've seen recently or commenting on the work of Anise, I'd love to hear more of that. Or, generalists for specialists. I think there's a lot to talk about. Hey, y'all, thanks again for joining us for Mograph Lunch. As a reminder, this is just the first part of a longer conversation that happens every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Clubhouse. We'll continue the NPG conversation as we talk about news, projects, and general industry advice. And then we'll open up the door on Clubhouse to answer questions live, interact with some of your peers, and get to know some of the folks in the industry. Follow the link below for more information, and we will see you next week.